then to conclude for the opposition and debate as a whole that would speak up opposition.
What closing opposition has brought to you in today's debate is that there is a problem with making exceptions and suspending democracy because the military, especially in this case, is likely to abuse their power, but more importantly, that the notion of making exceptions in general is bad. First of all, because it's not going to be successful. Second of all, even if it is successful, it's the wrong signalling that you're making to the rest of the world. I find it especially problematic that closing government today thinks that in times of crisis, military rule is always going to be more effective than democracy, and they feel that this is something that they want to promulgate throughout the rest of the world. I find that exceptionally problematic because it justifies military rule as being necessarily better than democracy when crisis calls out for it. That's a problem, right? Because if you're going to say that, oh, in this situation, crisis calls out for it, what happens in future when you claim that your country is in a certain sort of crisis when they actually aren't? What the problem here is that once you've made the exception once, you're telling me now that democracy is not always the best situation. You're allowing people to get away with military rule and say, hey, you know, I'm only doing it because you said that this is a good thing. You're allowing a lot of Middle Eastern countries to say, I'm fine with doing this because I am in a time of crisis. You allow them to make that sort of exception. We stand against that. But moving on beyond that entire, that completely morally abhorrent point, I'm just going to deal briefly with the mischaracterization that they made before going to deconstruct the government bench today as a whole. No. First, on the mischaracterization. Now this is really funny, because closing government today claims that the problem in status quo is that decisions are not made quickly, that because it takes a very long time for us to make decisions, this results in a lot of problems for the country because the government is indecisive. Now, first of all, we don't think the military is necessarily going to be more decisive. But more importantly, right, is that you completely misunderstood the situation. It's not that the government doesn't know what decision to make. They do. Their problem now is trying to get the people to cooperate. And the other side has never once told us how they are necessarily going to get people to cooperate just by changing the government in power. Because what you need to realize is that the policies that the military government is likely to enact are exactly the same as the policies that the civilian government is trying to enact. Austerity. So you're not telling me how the people are going to cooperate. And if they're not going to cooperate, then all your purported economic benefits don't exist. And our potential for corruption still exists. And even if corruption doesn't happen, why are we allowing that potential when you're not getting any benefits from it? Yeah. So now moving on to deconstructing their bench as a whole, right? Let's just go one by one. First of all, is the military going to listen to the EU in the first place if you allow them to take over? First of all, we say that no, they're unlikely to listen to the EU because they have differing opinions from them. Zheng has already covered that, never dealt with by them. But we say even if they do listen and they enact policies, the policies aren't going to be successful because the people are still going to disagree with them. They claim, right, people are